Today's video is going to be focusing on the MDV+1 and a critique of it not being a knife that can be brought into the fight very quickly because of the design of it. As a lot of you already know, the Rhino sheath was its original sheath, has a different utility to it, or the carry options are usually to be something inside of your pocket. But there are many options that will allow you to get this knife into the fight very quickly. And so we're going to be covering two different belt carry options. And then I'm going to show you a number of ways for you to actually get the knife into the fight as quickly as possible. So let's get into it. My mentor, Jack Nevels, has a saying, and that saying is the person who gets steel into the other person first is usually the winner. This kind of like falls right into the whole being fast, getting the blade out as quickly as possible. Now, this is going to be the first of a number of videos in a series. I'm going to call this series The Quick and the Dead. I want some sort of interaction with you guys as you are watching. I would like your opinions on things because I'm going to be covering a number of different principles or concepts, trying to pass on a lot of mindset. Whether you agree with it or not, you'll be able to see where I'm coming from. Question that I have for you is when I say get the knife into the fight or get your weapon into the fight, whether that be an improvised weapon, a blade, what skills are involved in that? You have the ability to draw and all this other stuff, but in your opinion, what skills are actually involved from the entirety of the perspective of personal protection? You are being ambushed, you fall into a violent scenario where you have to utilize a weapon system that's going to be considered lethal intent. So you understand that your life is on the line, great bodily harm is being applied to you or a loved one, and then you make the decision to actually access that weapon. How important is just being able to go from nothing to blade in someone, in your opinion? The skill set that kind of passes over from the shooting community. A lot of you will know what this is. This is a shot timer. Usually with a number of drills, they're going to be behind you. They're going to say shooter ready, and you're going to hear a beep, and then that's when you're supposed to go. So we'll have this in my pocket here. But what is the priority level of skill of me going stabber ready and then me being able to do that as fast as I possibly can and get it directly under a certain time, which is, based off of whoever you're training with. How important is that skill? The reason that I did that little demonstration is we are going to be doing that movement throughout this video. I'm going to show you two different belt carry options for the MDV+1, and I'm going to show you how to, at a relatively fast pace, get the blade into the fight. Because one of the things that happens with my blade design, so this is the MDV+1, the actual blade itself. This is how I carry it. The complaint that usually happens is people state that it's not a fast blade. It's not quick. Can't get into the fight as quickly because this is how it originally comes in. And that's true in some situations, but a lot of times the context or the actual intent of the design of the blade should come into play. I usually find that when I actually have those people in front of me, what they're talking about is they come from a martial art or a knife fighting background, and they are used to larger blades that are attached to their belt, and it may be a little bit more of a print, meaning it shows more. But the thing is that they have the ability to get to their knife and out as quickly as possible because those are the scenarios that are focused on in their training. I am going to be kind of covering how to bridge the gap between my original intent of the MDV and this. But I would really like to know what your opinions are. So shoot those answers down into the comments below. I do check the comments on all my videos, regardless of if I actually respond or not. There really isn't a lot that gets popped down there that I haven't seen before, but a lot of times I don't have the time to actually talk about. But in this series, I really do want to cover a lot of it. So before we get into everything, what I want to do is do a gear check. I'm going to show you what we're going to be working with so that if you want to replicate this, then that's fine. For those of you that don't have an MDV and have no intent on buying the MDV, what you are going to learn in this series is just a little bit more about the mindset that I have as I pass on information to special operations and to regular civilians as far as what they should carry, why they should carry it, the scenarios that kind of work directly in. The rest of you that do carry an MDV, it might provide you some alterations to the way you carry, or it might change how you approach different scenarios. So let's get into that gear check right now. All right, so the first thing is always going to be what you wear on a regular basis to move directly into any scenario. So, what do you actually wear on a regular basis when you go out? Do you actually have a uniformed style? For males, it's always going to be easier for you to do that than females. This kind of gets into the whole argument that I have when people start making these blanket statements on personal protection and how one thing is good and another isn't. Because a lot of times what happens is I question, who are you even talking about? Are you talking about males? Are you talking about females? Are you talking about female that is going somewhere where she is going to be dressed up? Does she wear tighter clothes? Does that female have pockets? Does she wear a belt? Is that blade able to be concealed in multiple different areas and able to be as easily accessible? For the males, are you constantly wearing the same type of clothing? Do you wear a belt? Do you wear a gun belt? A regular belt is going to sag over time because it is not designed to keep the rigidity. As far as my shirt is concerned for these videos, you'll find that a lot of times I usually have a button down shirt. I like these warrior shirts because they're elastic, meaning they stretch. They look like they are presentable, meaning you can go to most places and it looks like you are not bumming it. And I usually have my jeans on, and I train and I teach my classes in this because when I go out with my beautiful wife, what happens is I usually wear something like this. And over the years, I found that this is very easy for me to maintain. And that means that all of my draws, all of my personal protection stuff, when I'm grappling, when I'm fighting, all of this type of stuff is pretty uniform. So the first thing is, as you start looking at personal protection, you should start to identify, okay, if I'm going to carry something on me, whether that be an improvised weapon, a pistol, or a knife, how can I create the same type of environment as much as possible? So you want to control as many of the aspects as possible. And what you wear is something that you can control. With this, I have my shirt. I do have a shirt under this. And the reason I always have a shirt is when I'm doing training and I have to draw something over and over and over again, that wears the crap out of you as you start working around. Does add another level of concern, meaning the bunching up of the clothing. But for training, I find that it is just a lot better for people to have something directly under. I have a next belt directly on. I really like their belts, not sponsored by them. I like a ratchet system, the ability for me to just automatically loosen and tighten the belt whenever I need to, as that works in. And then I have jeans on. So that's basically my wear. One thing that a lot of my students have brought up is that I do not actually button the very last button down here. And the reason for that is, as I've gone through a lot of training, I found that when this is buttoned up, because of the way that shirts usually hang a little bit loose on the backside, if that button is locked in, you'll have a tendency for this to actually catch as you try to draw. Whereas if the button is loose here, you have the ability to at least clear wherever the weapon system is. And it was something that I didn't really think about. I just naturally did. Now let's talk about the gear. When you buy an MDV +1, this is really the kit that you get with it now. And so what happens is you have the knife and then you have the rhino sheath that comes in. And this is where the complaint comes in, because the original blade comes just like this. This is designed to be carried in your hand in most scenarios. I feel that a weapon in your hand is always going to be more applicable in more scenarios than having to reach down and create some overt action to try to draw. Now, this is designed to be placed in my pocket, just like this here. and it just hangs there. And then I'm able to grab this, place it in my hand, and then start working. If I want to draw it into this position, then I can do so. If I want to prep the blade, meaning while it's in my pocket, here, I can push the blade just a little bit, just like that. And if I want to draw it into a hammer grip or forward grip, then I can do that. If I want to draw it into a ice pick grip or reverse grip, I can also do that. And then the rhino sheath stays in my pocket. Now, the issue with this is it is not going to be as fast as some sort of belt attachment. And so that's where you'll find that we have other options. Now, the way that I like to secure the tape. So one of the things that happens is people find that the MDV comes bare, just like this. And the reason for that is I found when I start doing cutting into various things, whether that be meat that you find at the grocery store or in other scenarios where we do special operations training and we have animals that are deceased and you start doing cutting into them, the blood gets into a lot of the crevices of your knife. And so if you actually have a handle that has screws in them and all this other stuff, what happens is that gunk gets in there when you start practicing. And I just found that it's just a pain in the ass to try to get into all the nooks and crannies of that to try to clean it. Now, there are ways to do that, and there are machines that allow you to do that, but then things start getting expensive. And so what I wanted to do was I created a bare bone skeletonized knife so that you can create a handle however you wanted to. And then when there was blood or there was too much dirt or gunk or whatever it is, you could just cut all this off and then you could scrub down the metal, clean it perfectly, and then just grab your monkey tape, which is purchasable on skallywagtactical.com. You can get that on Amazon, and then redo whatever your preferred handle is. This is how I like to carry mine now. I basically create a bottom wrap so that it's a subdued look. And then I have a very, very large manipulation point that's in the center. I'll show you how to do that in a future video. You're going to need, if you're going to use the MDV, you're going to need obviously the original kit. I would highly suggest that you get a trainer. Do not do any fast movements unless you have a trainer. If you do not have a blade that has a exact trainer directly to it, there are ways to kind of train safely with it. But what happens is it's not going to be as realistic as possible. So what I'm going to be working on is I have two sheaths that you can actually get access to. The first one is going to be the flat sheath. Now, this is a sheath that a lot of people don't know has a lot of utility to it. When I use the sheath today, it's going to be with a soft loop, which you can also get on the site, and it has a basic IWB wrap to it. If you carry concealed pistol, this is something that you've seen often. A lot of times the larger pistols will have two soft loops that work on it, but basically this goes inside of your jeans or the waistband. This locks underneath the belt, and then it latches and secures there. And so there's that. And then the second one that we're going to be working on is having our retention sheath. A retention sheath is something that can be placed on kit, more readily accessible because of the way that the holes and divots are. It just makes it a lot easier for you to secure that to your kit. It only covers directly one molly or maybe 1.5 mollies. And so a lot of time people really like that as far as rows. I use this as a horizontal carry on my belt. Okay, and so what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at both of those and how that makes it so that you don't have to carry the knife in your hand, and it just is a lot faster as far as accessing the blade. So let's start off with the flat sheath. All right, so we have the flat sheath. I have my trainer basically wrapped up the same way I carry my regular MDV. And in turn, what happens is you'll notice that this is at an angle. The whole design of this is, I loosen my belt. This goes right behind the belt, the waistline right here. This goes directly in and underneath the belt. And what happens is it snaps in. Now, what I like to do is I roll it sideways, and this goes directly across. And so it is at an angle here. I do understand that a lot of people, I'll just take this blade, like for the blade to be like this. here. And I do believe that if you were to hold the blade, whether the hook be forward or backwards, like this, for you just to stand there and draw is going to be much faster. But the problem is that it breaks one of my concepts that I pass on to my students, which is anything that you conceal carry should be highly comfortable, and in turn it shouldn't be uncomfortable over time. So if you were to go out, with the wife to a restaurant, spend about 6 or 7 hours out and about, this shouldn't restrict your movement. And the thing is that when it is locked into your belt like this, anytime I bend over, even at this small blade, it's going to start to bother me as it starts poking into my leg. And there's a couple places that you could place this that reduces that, but it's still going to wear. And anytime that you have an attachment point, so maybe you have a metal belt attachment, it's going to start wearing on that and start warping the ability for it to lock in. So every single time you take it off, you might find that the actual attachment has bent up or down. That's why soft loops are real good. It's also why I take my blade and I place it across just like this. I like to bring this as far across as possible. And in turn, when I button this up, it sits here. Okay. Now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to go from here and I'm going to reach down. I'm going to do a two-hand draw. This is going to come up. I grab the blade and it just goes directly into that position. So we're going to see how quickly I can do that in this. Now, with this type of a drawing system, I always wanted to make sure that I'm able to, one, draw so that it goes into my primary hand. This is going to fall into a reverse grip. When I grab that, the hook is in between those first two knuckles right there. And in turn, that kind of makes it go sideways. It goes into a reverse grip. If I had to, I would be able to place this in my left hand. So if I had some sort of a grip here and I needed to, where I was locked into something, I could then draw this with my left hand and then get this out. Obviously, it would be in a forward grip when I did that, but the ability for both hands to be able to access my tool is going to be highly important, at least for me. And at this angle, I can sit down and it's not going to cause problems. And this is going to be something that's comfortable for me on a regular basis. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to be standing right in front of Bob, and the time's going to start once my hand grabs material, and then it'll stop on that punch. So let's watch a couple of those rounds and then we'll return to this position. All right, so as you saw, it's pretty fast. The thing is that I'm not exactly the fastest person to access that. That's not exactly the number one skill that I focused on as I designed this blade, but this is an option for you to do that. One of the other things that starts to come up is, yes, getting the blade into that person is important, but you should also be able to follow up. So these next few that you're going to see is me drawing the blade and then doing 2 cuts on that. And then I'm also going to be doing 2 cuts and an exit stab as I start to work in. So let's watch a couple of those, see how fast I can get that going. All right, so the next thing we're going to be working on is utilizing the retention sheath. Like I said, it usually comes like this, already pre-done. It's on the very bottom hole here. What I tend to do is I unscrew all of that and then I attach it to the topmost hole here. And when I do that, for this one, I cut off the rest of it so that it's as small as possible. Now, the way that I carry this is it locks in. This is going to go underneath the belt, and it is going to be held at a horizontal carry. Now, this is one of the ways that I carry this if I have a pistol on me. So the way that this works is from the belt, it locks directly in just like this, and it goes over the top. Okay, and so now it's a horizontal carry, and all I do is I just tighten this all up, and from here I button everything up. My draw is the exact same, but it is going to be falling into a actual forward grip. So I do a two-hand draw. This comes directly in, I grip, and then from that position it's going to draw. Now, one of the things that happens when you draw this is it can be much slower than the previous option. And the reason for that is when I draw up, I can press forward as quickly as possible. When I am drawing across my body, you tend to have this retraction of your hand. So if I retract the blade and start to press forward, I'm going backwards and forward, and obviously that's going to cause more time. So what I tend to do is if I want to get the blade into them as quickly as possible, I create a little bit more distance than I would normally with the reverse grip. And as I do this, time starts as I grab, and then time stops when I press. And so when I'm here, I just draw, and then I flick my wrist forward, and then I press. And if you have a good grip on this and everything is properly grabbed onto, what happens is that press is going to be as fast because I'm drawing straight into that position. All right, so let's watch a couple of those rounds, and then we'll come back. And just like the previous option, you're not going to want to just draw that into a stab because you're going to have movement and angles and all these other things. So what we're going to do in these next few demos is I'm going to draw, and I'm either going to cut once, then twice to the face, or I'm going to cut to the face and then do some sort of exit stab. Okay. I always advocate that once you start cutting, you attach yourself, you reposition by using movement, use them as much as you possibly can to get a better view of the area. But the whole goal of just me doing this isn't as important as understanding that your cuts that you normally learn are going to have to be applied to it. So yes, it is important for you to be fast like that, but in turn, that's not the only thing that happens. And if you train to just do this, you are going to stop at that point. So you want to make sure that, yes, you're fast like that, but in turn, you should be practicing more often, if not the majority of the time, on continuously cutting and continuously attaching yourself and putting yourself at an advantageous position that puts them at a disadvantage. So let's watch a couple of those as we move forward. All right, so as you can see, the comparison of the two times, one's going to be faster versus the other, but they're relatively close. For those of you that have a flat sheath, you also have the ability to do a horizontal carry with the flat sheath. All I do is I place the button on the very bottom here, and then on the back, I use the second hole from the top as I work that in, and it would just place directly the same way as this works in locks, and then your trainer would go across, and it would just be a horizontal carry in that fashion. Always remember that you can get all this stuff at skallywagtactical.com. Use the code ELITEU, you get 10% off. Now I'm going to give you one concept to enhance your ability to be effective on your actual draw, if this is going to be your primary way of getting the blade into the fight, and it is to eliminate telegraphing. If you do a lot of striking, telegraphing is one of the things that you want to try to eliminate from as much of your movement as possible. You want it to be as streamlined as you can. So say I was to be throwing a jab to the center here. If I start to try to add power to this, what happens is you'll tend to roll your shoulders more because you're trying to put more ass behind your shot as possible. And it's not necessarily needed at first. So you tend to have, if you have a good boxing coach, what'll happen is they'll talk about wanting to keep your elbows in, and you want to just reach forward and touch your target as clean as you can. If all I did was I rolled and tried to hit hard, you'll have other things that start to work. You'll wind your shoulder back, your elbow will start to flare, and then you start rotating in. When you throw the jab properly, it should just go straight here forward, and then you roll to lock that into its proper form. If you work on a double end bag, what happens is your shots come from at your elbow point forward. And somebody that has a good video on this is Michael J. White. He is an actor, but he has a lot of actual martial arts skills that translate into sparring and some aspects of fighting. And he has a video between him and Kimbo Slice where he starts to talk about, all I want you to do is put your hand up. And from this point, I'm going to try to hit your hand 3 times. And I'm just going to show you the difference between telegraphing and not telegraphing.
It's all about technique, man, because it's just like one of the things I do is like I've trained with a lot of people, like a lot of top boxers and stuff. Right. And a lot of boxers are taught how to throw a flawed, they're taught how to throw a flawed punch. Right. It's like this. It's like, like when I was catching up to you before, and you were going, oh, how's that happening? Yeah. It's like this. Like, what's your fastest hand?
I would say probably my left hook.
Okay, well, hey, put your left hand up. Like, just go like this, right? Now I'm gonna throw three jabs. Right. Don't let me hit them. Don't let me hit your hand.
So what you want me to do?
Just move it out the way.
All right.
So now notice the speed of the first 2, right? Ready?
Yeah.
That's 1, 2. Okay, now here's the third one. Don't let me hit it. Ready?
Yeah.
How the hell? Come on, man.
All right, so as you could see, what happens is all he's doing is just reaching forward and touching, and because he's not telegraphing, Kimbo couldn't move his hand out of the way, and it's a little bit of a bewilderment to him. The way that you can practice that with this and the blade is the understanding that I don't need to put a lot of power behind the initial stab. Now, I fully understand that even if I told you that when you draw this and this is going forward, I don't need a lot of power to hit, but if you practice to eliminate your telegraphing, I understand in a real scenario, you're going to be putting a lot of force behind it. And so the added emphasis on the strength and power that's applied in a real scenario is going to over telegraph what you normally do. So if you're already telegraphing in your practice, when you start to use it in any real scenario, it's just going to be something that is overly exaggerated. Okay, and so how do you eliminate that? One of the ways that I practice is I sit here and I just draw by placing this up, and I put my hand right where the blade is. And so I just go there and I just do this a couple of times, and I'm just making sure I can access the blade. Now, the next thing I'll do is, I'll knock that out a couple of times so I understand how I have to draw this up. And then I'll do is I'll just touch the blade and I'll reach forward and I'll go here. So I'll be here on Bob and I'll be here and then forward. Okay, here, forward, and I'm trying to be as straight as possible on this. I'm not even drawing the blade. I'm just reaching and touching. And one of my coaches used to tell me that if you can touch, you can hit. And so what happens is once I have this down, all I'm going to do is just add the knife directly to that, and that is going to be as clean as I possibly can get it. So if you guys are trying to adopt these carry positions, or you have your own blade, these are things that you can kind of incorporate that will streamline your technique. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. There's going to be a number of videos that follow up on it. Please throw comments, opinions down below if you have any questions as far as what we covered today or future blades. So I'm going to be working on the MDV folder and how to actually get that into the fight quickly. And then I'm also going to go back to the original carry intent of the MDV fixed blade and show you how you can get that into the fight as quickly as possible. So hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.